I'll try to keep the talk almost as short as I am. I'm going to go through some facts and opinions and theories about character steins and try to educate some of you about some of the more common factories and how you can tell the difference and why you might want to tell the difference. When you see one Stein on a table and it's $400 and you see another one at $1,000, what's the difference? Why does porcelain sell for more money than the pottery typically? So what's shear holes? Why does that carry such a big heavy price tag? Learning the factories is just important to any Stein collector. You want to know whether it's a Metlock or whether it's an HR. And they have some common characteristics and traits. I'm going to go fast, and if you'll hold your questions until the end, we'll get through the slides. There's two trays of slides, so I want to kind of roll along. And before we have questions, even at the end, we're going to have a little test. So, welcome to Lessa's school, and believe it or not, I'm going to have a test. I might ask Helen, show a picture, was this a J.W. Remy or a Shearholtz piece? And but it's going to be a real easy one, so don't worry about it.
If you do that, I'll tell them how long you took in the shower this morning.
There's an easy way and a hard way to tell who made these things. First of all, there's lots of books. This was the first, what I call, good book on beer steins, and Gary's even improved it in the second book. And more and more the information, not just a picture and a price, but information about it, mold numbers and factories, who made them, appear in the books. Here in his earlier book, he'd list that it was Reinhold Merkelbach or that it was Muster-Schutz. At that time, we didn't know Muster-Schutz was Shearholtz, but at least we were saying who they were. There's now a couple good books on just character steins. There's this one. It's still in print. I'm sorry, it's still available. And this is only like a $12 book. If you don't have it, it covers about 450 different character steins. But it was written in 1976, and they didn't really know near as much about it as the same authors learned last time. Gene Manusoff, with the help of Mike Wald, and Mike got his name on the second book, made tremendous improvements. And it's not a duplication. It's another 400 steins with hardly any overlap and a tremendous amount of correction of information from the first book. There's the marks in the book so that they can be identified not only by the factory but in the dating period as to when the different factories used the different marks. In the back of the second catalog, character stein book, in the new one, in the back there's a section called Old Catalogs. And from Horst-Grenshausen, they were able to go to the factories and get from the manufacturers and their archives reproductions of their catalogs, so we can see some of the steins that appeared. And it came up here today, a fellow here with a stein with a monkey on the handle. Let's see if it's in one of these pictures, Stein Zeugler. Now this is J.W. Remy's catalog, so we know all these steins are made by J.W. Remy, whether they're marked or not. Here's a close-up of the J.W. Remy monkey and dog. Another way to use the books is just in the index. The Ernest Bone, you can look and just look through the pictures to get an idea of what Ernest Bone looks like. The Diesingers, you can look through the character stein books and identify which ones are Diesingers and look for common traits. Pat Manusoff, our executive director, did even better than that. Her and her husband Gene come out with this second book on Diesingers. It's a $25 book. You can get it from them. It's in Prosit and advertised, and I've got a couple of them here. Only on this one factory, Diesingers. It covers other steins in addition to characters, but about half of the books in here, or signs in here, are characters too. Another way is the catalogs themselves from the crazy workaholics that will put together an auction. This guy learned after about 3 auctions that it's a lot more work than he thought it was. And the smart one holding the sign. But I tried not just introducing color, but also giving a little more complete description. And I think competition is good for the business and for our hobby. I'd hate to have it in the hands of any one person. And I think that the catalogs improved a little bit. I think Andre's last catalog is absolutely fantastic. And you'll notice in there that instead of just saying, monkey beer Stein, now they'll say what factory it was, a mold number. So if you've got one on the shelf, you can look, and if it's got the same mold number and it says it's JW Remy or something, then you can put that information inside your Stein and learn more about them through the auction catalog. These were part of the descriptions identifying mold numbers and factories. Now the hard way to learn about who made these things is through observation. And not many people have as much opportunity as I to run around, travel, and look into everybody else's collection. But when you do, pick them up and pass them around and look at them and try to find these characteristics. This is where the opinion part of it starts coming in, but I'm going to start with what I feel are kind of the lower, cheaper ones. The market agrees with me because they're less expensive, but I think they're less expensive partly because of the quality of the ceramics themselves. The first one is hanky. And although most of the hanky Steins have relatively low quality, you have to speak in terms of generalities. I'm going to pass this one around, which doesn't have some of the traits that I'll talk about, but to show that there's diversity. This is also made by Hankey because it's in the old catalog shown as Hankey, and it's a really fine detailed, good relief, good glaze, good quality Stein. Some of the things to look for in this first factory, Reinhold Hankey, is this handle. This one I'm passing around again is not like that because it uses the tail of the fox as the handle, where almost all of them will use this handle, which is a leaf pattern. And it's they're very seldom marked. So that is the classic way to find and identify that one. Here's the bottom view of that leaf handle. They're porcelain or they're pottery or stoneware, never porcelain. Most of the factories, either in Horgrenshausen, used the clay there, or in a different area they'd use porcelain. Very few factories used all three, pottery, stoneware, or porcelain. This is quite typical for the Hankey factory, often uncolored. It's a cute little guy reading a newspaper, but the detail and the quality of the relief, in my opinion, leaves things to be desired. I'm not talking down anyone's Steins except my own. These are from my own collection. So amongst the 900, I'd put these at the lower end in terms of my appreciation or value for them. I like this one just because of what it says, men don't anger yourself, but it also comes with different verses. And the one I like to show my wife all the time is, wife, don't anger your spouse. If I don't have it, I certainly want it, but they're lower price Steins starting at about, characters now are at least $250 for bottom end characters. And $200 to $400 is the typical pricing you'll see in the catalogs for a Hankey. This being a little bit better one, again, more like the one I passed around with relief on it. You can always see the same handle. Another version that's almost like the one I'm passing around. And this is kind of the epitome of what I consider to be a poor quality factory work. Here you have a collar that does not match the lid. This is original. It wasn't a mismatch by one lid going on a different body. It came out of the factory this way. The artist designed the Stein with this shirt with buttons going up and a collar going up here, and there's a different head that has the matching collar. If you look at this, you'll see how this collar design, even though it was glazed different, maybe even fired at a different time, it always matched. The artist would take particular care to make things line up and to make the pewter ring as unobtrusive as possible. But the factory, maybe they ran out of this head for a while and they just grabbed this one and they stuck them together. It's amazing how often we'll see what I call this factory mismatch. This is a case, which is the most extreme case, where we have never found the right body for this head or the right head for this body. This is Reinhold Hanke. We say Hanke because it ends in E, but the German would be Hanke, from Hort Renshausen. Helen, who made it? There you go. Okay. This will be on the test. We're going to ask you later. We're going to show a picture of this. We're going to say, who made this? We'll count three. I might pick on somebody, or we'll all just say, who made this one? We'll see who can remember. Hanke, Reinhold Hanke. The next factory, for some traits, is maybe a little easier, certainly easier to recognize, J.W. Remy. Some of the traits are more of a matte finish, not a high gloss finish. And in pottery, not the stoneware. Pottery is a lighter material. It's not fully vitrified. It means it's a little porous. If you put water in it, like a clay pot, the water would seep through, unless you had a glaze over the top of it. There's a series of these that are very similar, the dog, the cat. Very cheap pewter, very thin, very easy to bend, very easy to break. You'll often find it with damage to the hinge. The pewter ring is very thin. The lid goes back real hard, often damage here at the tank. Sometimes marked JW, usually not. There's a pig in the same series. This monkey is the old J.W. Remy, which was reproduced later by Grimscheid. And notice the difference. Here there's pottery to pottery, which chips very easily. And it was made even less expensive than the original, which had the pewter ring. This is the old J.W. Remy, and this is the reproduction using the same mold, or a similar mold, by Grimscheid. This is one of their better pieces, and it's not marked, but it's identified in their catalog. This was also reproduced, an old and a new version. Always very thin pewter, very usually this fleur-de-lis, inexpensive thumb lift, and often damaged. Going back to this one, J.W. Remy. Okay, now next factory is Reinhold Merkelbach. Definitely a better quality Stein. This is one of the marks, and the most common mark you'll see. The numbers impressed into the bottom of the clay are larger. When you look at lots of these things, you can start to identify them just by the size and the style of the numbers. It's always done in pottery. And I hate to say always, because as soon as you say always, you come up with exception. There's exceptions to every rule. But we'll say for all practical purposes, always done in pottery. they have often bases. They like music boxes, and they stick them high up on music box bases. Or if there wasn't a music box, you can tell if the empty bottom was meant for a music box. It'll have 3 holes to mount and hold the music box. But even if they didn't have the holes, they were often put up on high bases to make a half-liter Stein a little more presentable and higher. And they're big on bases and having verses on the bases. These are all Reinhold Merkelbach. The similarity here, the main trait is the handles are plain. The bases hold the Stein up high, and there's usually verses on the bases. And here's the exception. There's always an exception. No raised base at all, no verse at all. And another one, but marked Reinhold Merkelbach. This is the one that's on the front of the first character Stein book. A slightly raised base with a verse. Okay, raised base, verse, Reinhold Merkelbach. Reinhold Merkelbach. Okay. This test is going to be real easy. Don't worry about it. Okay. Now, Merkelbach, Reinhold Merkelbach, Merkelbach Wick. I'm sorry I got the same name in here because it was the same families and they're related in Horgrenzhausen. This mark is seldom clear. It's a round circle with squigglies in it. It's actually an M and a ampersand for Ann, a fancy W, which is the Merkelbach and Wick, and then there's a G here, R for Grenzhausen. When you can see a clear one, that's what it says. It was Merkelbach and Stoutman Company before 1892, but then they used this mark after 1892. These are better character Steins. The details in the face are just typically better quality. The glazing is just typically better quality. Again, we can tell these, even if they're not marked by the handle, they're very consistent using the same handle. It's kind of like a piano keyboard on the back with this 2-part mount on the lower part. The pewter is thicker. It's seldom damaged because of the thickness where the tang attaches to the rim lid. They just used a little more material, and it really helps today. They have a very typical fat, roly-poly shape as compared to those tall ones. A different style regardless of the subject matter. All Merkelbach and Wick, and the fat little roly-poly guy. We'll pass this one around. It's not marked. We'll wait till we get to that factory. Wrong factory. But notice the consistency of the handle and the consistency of the fat little shape. And then again, the exception. Totally different, longer shape, but fortunately marked so we can tell. And again, a taller one, but marked so we can tell. Next one is the easiest, probably of all character Steins to recognize, and especially now that we've got this Diesinger book out. And it's marked DRGM 1549-27, the patent that was taken out for this series of Steins. Almost all the character Steins are in the 600 to 800 serial number range. Many of them, however, are marked only either Germany or Glashütz without the DRGM mark on it. The DRGM means patented, I don't know if somebody can say it, the Deutsches, Reiches, etc. And now that we know who manufactured these Steins, we should no longer say DRGM, we should say Diesinger. Right now they're harder to buy because the book is out and it became a brand name. These Steins only 2 years ago were $300 to $500 in that range. Today, the last one that came up in one of the auctions hit $800. Books will have that effect for a very short time, and there'll be a little hype on it, and then they'll taper down again and should sell somewhere in the interim of that. But they're very cute faces and very well designed, humorous scenes. There's a few things that make it very easy to recognize. Almost all of them will have this honey-colored, orangish iridescent base and a row of dots or a double row of dots. This is the very classic thumb lift that's almost always seen on the character Steins. They have a color and a texture that make them easy to identify. Often verses in little cartouches and this bubbly character, a texture, and leaves on the side. This is the typical and the classic thumb lift. The ceramic is, in my opinion, wonderful. The pewter is, again, very thin, very chintzy, easy to break. They went too light on it, and you'll often see it damaged. Again, the base makes it probably one of the easiest things to recognize. They have the same base, whether it's a head or a full figure. This is the classic handle. I think I've got a better example for it. But this is another example of a factory mismatch. This Stein was meant to have this lid. The ribbon around the bow goes back on both sides and is painted out blue on both sides. But they also found it with the jester. I don't know if I have that slide. Here you can see the ribbon going back. They also have this with a jester hat head lid. They put a different lid on it, and then at the factory, instead of having this ribbon show, they just used the same color brown and coated over it. So I've seen this now in 2 different hairstyles. She changed her hairstyle. Well, most ladies can do that. And also with the jester hat. So 3 different lids came on this same body directly from the factory. This is the most common for the head series handles. It's a version of the snake swallowing his tail. Same handle on the monkey. A student. They didn't know what to call this. They just said the man with the duck. And actually it's not a man. Let's see if I've got the... Yeah, there's the man. And this is a hangover Stein. You've got the headache in the morning, and here the brains are coming out of his head, and he had the delirium tantrums, and the bug is up there. And too much beer, and you have that dry taste in your mouth in the morning, the feathers. It's all the symbols. Here's the cracked head with the brains spewing out. Well, I'm glad I'm old enough not to have those feelings anymore. And the mate to it is the man. There's a couple different textures for the same Stein. I call this a measle version. I don't know what else to call it. It has a little red dot and a pocked texture. It has the same mold number, although it's the same Stein, the same coloring on the face, etc. It's, not only glazed different, but the mold is different in that it doesn't have that measle, which is not just paint, it's relief dots and a totally different texture. I expect everybody to be able to get the example that we'll show at the end as the test for the DRGMs. That one's the easiest. but we won't say DRGMs. We'll all say Diesingers. Okay. A hard one to identify is, unless it's marked, and most of them are not, is the HR Steins. And notice the very small numbers that are darkened by a blue glaze. They put the glaze over the numbers and then wipe the glaze off. The glaze stays in the indented surface. And whoever made these things, if you read the last issue of Prosit, the experts, Mike and the people over in the area from Huber and Reuther are arguing about whether these were actually made at the factory or whether HR was just a decorator. Mike thinks that the factory made only the porcelains and bought the other bodies and only decorated the bodies. But whoever made them, the factory that did this particular glazing series, these Steins are too similar that there's got to be a connection. This is known as the HR Owl, which we've also seen one time in porcelain. They are sometimes marked by being impressed and sometimes marked with the coloration over it, which is one of the reasons Mike thinks that they bought this Stein from somebody else and then they decorated it in full color because it comes both ways. And when it's in the full color, it'll have the HR marking on it. This marked, again, with a different HR, but not impressed into it. There's also this little Edelweiss flower from whoever made these things. This is a Stein that comes in 3 different ways. It comes fully decorated like this and lettered by HR. It comes in the blue salt stoneware, which if you take the glaze off of this you'd see, and it also comes in porcelain. And the porcelain has never been marked, but it's the exact same mold. And here's a series of what I think is the same factory because it has the same number, types, and styles, body shapes, pewter, and everything else, but are not attributed yet to HRs. It's only one person's opinion. Whoops! must be the wrong slide series here. This is kind of an unusual situation of a character Stein with a beard and the exact same Stein without the beard. 2 different lids. The bodies are marked the same, but 2 different lids with the beard or without the beard for the same HR Stein. HR has been attributed to making a couple of the very good stoneware Steins. This Bustle Lady, although it's never been proven that it's HR, and it's not been seen with an HR mark, and the Bicycle are both attributed to HR on a probable but unproven basis. My favorite factory for pottery is Dumler and Bryden. The quality of the relief is absolutely superb, and that is the way that you can identify the Dumler and Bryden series. The other factor is a huge amount of detail, almost Rococo to Baroque, very, very busy, tiny little detailed swirls all over the place in Dumler and Bryden. Almost any time you see stoneware or pottery so intricately detailed, you might find a PD on it for Peter Dumler. He was, in my opinion, the very best of the mold makers in Horg-Renshausen, although he learned from Hanke, and Hanke did very good work in non-character Steins. They came a little later. In the things that they did before, they had excellent work, and Hanke was considered the master that taught Peter Dumler. But in character Steins, Dumler carried that artistry into a perfection. If you compare this quality of detail and the amount of detail that goes into that mold with the later productions and the newer Steins, it'll change some of these Ceramark collectors that I keep teasing into getting into the antique Steins. Here again is a very typical example of Peter Dumler's, the huge amount of relief and detail that went into his molds. This is made by Peter Dumler. Joseph Reinemann was a distributor, kind of like a Macy's store, not a manufacturer. They would have things marked with their name on it, but they were a Munich distributor. And this is where character Steins start, not because of the quality of the Stein so much as the commonness of this Munich child.
Who is that with?
Reinemann, Joseph Reinemann of Munich. This looks similar to the Reinemann Stein and is usually called a Reinemann Stein, but is marked by Lichtner, which was also another Munich distributor. A Diesinger's style of row of dots is the main difference, but the color and the glazing of the other one is different also. Munich is where they were located, and you'll see mostly Munich things about it. This was from a Turnfest in Munich. Pottery or stoneware, never porcelain. Nice Steins, simple Steins. Often not glazed. And about the only way to really tell these is by having them marked, and most of them are marked in the base. This is one of the nicest things that they did. This is the artistry of Franz Ringer. And after Mark Durbin wrote an article about Franz Ringer, that became then a factory name, and they got so expensive and people started collecting them that he could no longer afford them. But a trademark in this particular artist, this is called the Biedermeier style of art, is these fingers. Always unusual shapes for the fingers or knuckles where the outside knuckles protrude larger than the inside knuckles. So they did use some good artistry. Again, the classic Franz Ringer artist, often seen on Joseph Reinemann Steins. This is a children's series of Steins. Most of them are little quarter-liter Steins. And many of the Steins were not of a good quality, inexpensive pieces. T.W. Theodor Weissler is Nuremberg, and the easiest way to remember him is just from Nuremberg. This is the tower from the city wall of Nuremberg. There's still 4 of these towers left, and they were like the Munich child of Munich. This was the symbol that people brought home, the tower from the city wall of Nuremberg. And here's a 2-liter one that's marked TW. Now, they weren't opposed to selling things in Munich, and this Munich child, or Munich Frauenkirch tower is also marked TW. But this is another symbol, the Iron Maiden, the torture chamber, where the front opened up and there were spikes inside, and they would close the front as a torture chamber, is also part of Nuremberg. Now we'll get into my favorite one. We wish we knew more about him. New research is showing that Martin Pawson, I don't know if you can read it or not, but Martin Pawson was a pewterster first. And the lids cost 3/4 of the value of the Stein. It cost 3 times as much to make a lid as it did the ceramics of a Stein. And the way to be selling more of these Steins was for the tinsmiths or the pewtersters to act as distributors for a lot of these steins and help get the sales up. And sometimes you will see Martin Pawson, Munich, or just Pawson written here on the strut on the side of the stein. And anytime you see the name Pawson, without exception, it's on very heavy, thick pewter, almost undamageable. It's heavy and thick enough so even if somebody didn't know what they're doing, slops the lid back and forth, it's never damaged. Everything that Martin Pawson did and put his name on is high quality. It's thick pewter, and it's still today, maybe the ceramic is broke, but the pewter is still in good condition. Some of these steins are marked. This mountain stein is a different variation. It's a different mountain. It's from the city of Windelstein instead of the one that we commonly know called the Zugspitz. Again, a Martin Pawson stein. In my opinion, this is the very best of about 80 or 90 Munich child character steins. When you see this little face, it's just like the best quality porcelain doll that you would ever find. This was probably a free gift from the coffee factory. I'm guessing that it was something that was given to their distributors or something as a freezy or used in the stores where their coffee was sold. Today it's a very rare and hard to find stein, and there is a matching stein, I wish I could show you, I don't have it yet, of a coffee bag, both with a nice lithophane inside of them, but marked and distributed by Martin Pawson. A very nice character stein, also a hard one to find, and marked on the bottom. This one we've seen go very high in the auctions. It comes in 1.5 liters, and it is the best of the several variations of the Frauenkirch Tower. Martin Pawson has his name down in the bottom of it. I have never seen Martin Pawson's name on something I wouldn't be very, very proud of. The next factory is, I've got two marks, one being the anchor mark with a B on it, either impressed or, as this one is, a blue stamp under the glaze of Ernest Bowen. And this over here is the small anchor mark. It's very small and often hard to find and usually not there. So since it's not there, we'll learn what makes up the Bowen factory. I'm only going to cover two of the porcelain factories. The Bowen factory, now we're at what I consider to be the top quality of character steins. And we can argue between Ernest Bowen or von Schierholz, but both are absolutely top quality. The Bowen pieces will usually have a pewter ring holding up the lid. So it's protected, it's not ceramic to ceramic, so it's less likely to be damaged. But the pewter ring is an intrusion on the aesthetics of the piece as you look at it on the shelf. They are not heavily glazed, they're bisque finished. They were very practical. If you open the lid up and it's an empty stein, on many steins, they'll literally fall over. But they were very practical, and they always put a handle on it in some way that would support the base to make it a very stable stein. Now again, I said always, almost always. Here's two different sizes of the moon, and another example of how well they would support the stein stability. Let me go back to here's another point. The mark is always on the outside of the Ernest Bowen steins as compared to the other factory, the Schierholz stein. Absolutely marvelous, deep relief, not made with one mold, but molds put together, applied to each other. The front face is not part of the same mold as the back part of the face. This is the classic thumb lift, not always, but probably found on 75% of the Ernest Bone character steins. This is the classic bone handle, again, always supporting the base. Two versions of the monkey. And here's the exception, a very easy to fall over Stein. The bowling pin is not supported in any way, and it's very easy to tip over. There's this bisque owl, which is a very pretty Stein done in the typical bisque way. And then the exception. This is a glazed Stein, unusual for bone. So it's hard to say any one trait as an always situation. It's best to learn more than one of the traits. But if you looked at the handle, you would see that it's an Ernest Bone Stein, as well as being marked. A nice glazed Stein, the classic thumb lift, the typical handle supported in the base, was made by... You guys are pretty smart. There's a close-up of the classic Ernest Bone thumb lift. Next to the bore, I consider this to be the absolute top quality, best of the character steins. If I do a book, that will probably be on the cover. Now, for the sake of Stein collectors who say, only Metlock are worth buying, we have to include the Metlock series. They did make 3 steins which are recognized as character steins, but there's also the pretzel pile, and there's a beaker that's a lady with a dress you have to turn upside down that could be called a character beaker, and there's tree trunk steins that are in my collection too that I also consider to be character steins. But the interesting thing here is this is the best quality of the Metlock steins, and therefore they sold more of these than the other 2 at the turn of the century, and therefore there's more of them out there. So this stein will sell at, let's say, $900 for a single number as a good guess, because they're the most common. This one looks pretty nice, but it's much harder to find. It's not as good of a quality, and it's not as attractive when you hold it in your hands as this one. So now we're up to maybe about $1,400, $1,500 because it's hard to find. And once you got these 2 in your Metlock collector, you got to have this 3rd one. But it's ugly. It is an ugly character stein. I'm talking about my own stein, so don't be offended if you have it. When you compare it to the other 2, it's ugly. It's so ugly they couldn't sell the darn things at the turn of the century. Therefore, there are hardly any of them out there. And when you do find one in an auction, it'll go for about $2,000. So you go from pretty at $900 to ugly for $2,000. That's not as true with other steins, and it's the Metlock market that influences that variation. And now the Arthur von Schierholt steins, and this is the old mark. If you read the prosit and saw Pat's comments, we have to thank Pat Manusoff and Riley's in California for cornering the von Schierholtz people and talking them out of reproducing the steins with the old mark. They have agreed in a letter in writing to no longer reproduce them without using their current marks. So there will be less of these new reproduction ones available that might trick or might fool or might hurt somebody in the future. But there are about 150 of the reproductions from the same molds. The China painting is different, but if you don't have both of them to compare, you could get hurt. The pewter is different, but as soon as they patina it, unless you know, you could get hurt. SCI can be congratulated for protecting the collector for getting the factory to make the change. Most people consider porcelain, it's a more expensive item, it's a more delicate item. The China painting on the porcelain is easier to make of a higher quality because it's non-porous. and this is top of the line stuff. The rabbit last sold at $2,600. About 2,000 is a good number for any of this series. Very good humorous designs. Typical for Arthur von Scherholz's factory is no ring to break up the design at all. And a very meager strap, nothing in the thumb lift to detract from the porcelain itself. This is a very typical thumb lift used by Arthur von Scherholz. The ring in this case is unusual. They don't usually have a ring. This is 2 character Steins for the price of 1. You've got a little radish down here under the tail. That's under the tail of the elephant Stein. And the elephant Stein was used both as a drinking vessel and I believe here as an ashtray because it has a solid bottom.
Hey, that's my rooster.
This was reproduced and it's almost never seen without repairs to the glasses. These 2 little rings out here are so delicate that it's almost never seen in mint condition. And Friedlein showed me one of the 2 or 3. I've only seen a couple of them. Well, I'd love to trade you because mine's got repairs on the glasses. The company was flexible in that you could buy the Stein with or without a music box base. So absolutely any of the Scherholz pieces, what we used to call muster shoots, with the tic-tac-toe marks, could possibly come with a music box base. There's variations of this pig. There's the, I don't know if I've got them here or not. There's color variations in the blue and white, which is very rare. The common pig, we'll say at $400 to $500, will be literally doubled in price by the rare blue and white. Delft was popular at the time and they were copying that design. But the price will double for the more rare blue and white Scherholz pieces. It will add about 50% to have the base on the bottom as a variation in the pricing. So you've got a basic pig, you've got the blue and white version. This is the pig with the pipe. The other one is called the singing pig with his mouth open. You've got the pig with his arms crossed. And this is a different version with his arms at his side. You've got a half liter and you've got a 3/10 liter. So if you mix all those different variations, I counted them up and you can have 64 different pigs. Now you have to be a pig to get all 64 of them. I'm up to about 14 or 15 of different variations of that now. The mark is usually, but not always, there. This was reproduced back in the 50s or 60s as a bank. And it comes both in the full color or in the Dutch Delft. And usually the color will add considerably. They're usually the honey-colored Steins, except for this pair. This pair, because of the Dutch theme along with the Delft, is usually not in the color, but usually in the blue and white. Absolutely the best of the character Steins. They have all of the military heads. Many of these get very expensive because it's not just character Stein people wanting them, it's the regimental collector that's also wanting them. So you have 2 collectors, twice as much people bidding on the Steins, getting the price up on the Scherholz military heads. Wilhelm I. Top of the line, best quality ever. The one that, I wish this was it, but the one that Ronnie sold in the convention auction was a knockout Stein. $4,000, I think, it brought something like that. Absolutely fantastic Stein. 4,000 sounds like a lot of money. When you see that Stein, it's a lot of Stein. I'm going to interrupt myself for just a second. The person that paid $4,000 for this will have that on his shelf the rest of his life, whatever that amounts to. That will never be traded for something else. let's go down the road 5 years or 10 years. That $4,000 is no longer a big number. 20 years later, he's got it, and almost nobody else has it. When you buy junk today, it's junk tomorrow. When you buy the top-end stuff, it knows no ceiling. The Steins are not to be looked at as an investment. You should go in the other things. I was going to say real estate, but trust me, that's not too good of an idea right now. But you buy Steins to enrich your life. There's more than $4,000 every time that guy walks past that Stein and sees the quality of that. That's got to be the pride of his collection. And if and when it ever wants to be sold, whatever you pay for a Stein 10 years ago, think about it, if you've been collecting for a while, 20 years ago, whatever you paid for that very good Stein that you had, geez, that's a lot of money, I'm not sure I want to spend that much. Now when you look at it, ask any old collector, the time that they reached into the pocket the deepest is the smartest decision they made. When they bought junk, they got rid of it and it was a problem. But when they bought top quality stuff, that was the thing that they did right. Very simple thumb lifts, nothing to detract from the ceramic itself for Arthur von Scherholz. This is about as fancy as Arthur von Scherholz gets in a thumb lift. There are only a couple exceptions to that. This is the one that was marked Muster. The relief quality is actually excellent. A sample is like a probe. The other thing that you'll see in Arthur von Scherholz like no place else is fantastic lithopanes. This is the lithopane in the bottom of that mushroom Stein. They're very large and they're extremely detailed. If you look in any regimental Stein, there's a lithopane there, but usually so crude you have to look closely to figure out what it is. In the large Scherholz pieces, the Trickster is another one with an absolutely incredible lithopane. Top of the line, detailed in their work, character Steins. Hard to find. Often chip, unfortunately, because of ceramic to ceramic, but we no longer say muster shoots. We call these Steins Scherholz. Test is going to be real easy. You start right now with the test, okay? Now, look to the person next to you, figure out your own way of keeping track. Whoever comes up with the right answer, keep track of your score. We'll ask for a show of hands, how many got them all right, how many missed them all. In just a minute, look at the Stein, look at the photo. I'll count 1, 2, 3, and I'll point out some traits and see if you learn anything and can remember any names at all. Mismatch, what I consider poor quality. First one we showed, I won't pick on Helen at all. She'll tell how long I took a shower this morning. But it was made by Hanke, right. Okay. The very bottom of Steins, not made by a factory, but always marked by a distributor, often Munich. And the mark on the bottom is... There we go. Who said it first? There you go. Joseph Reinemann. This is the most common character Stein starting at the bottom. And character Steins are worth $250 at the bottom and going up. With this exception, these little guys are so common, they're maybe worth half of that. Okay, a bisque finish, mostly a series of animals, sometimes marked chintzy cheek pewter, often broke pewter, made by J. W. Remy. Okay, so now we got 3. Count how many you got out of 3 so far. An easier one, perhaps, better well known, factory that's better well known. Only way you're going to know about this one is to look on the bottom and if it's got a mark. It is made or distributed or painted by HR. Now, everybody's going to get this one right, so everybody can say it at one time. The classic thumb lift, the ring of dots on the bottom, classic handle of the snake, chintzy pewter, number series from 6 to 800. We won't say any initials, but it was made by Diesinger. And now we come up with what a personal opinion is the very best quality in all types of Steins, and you have to see it by the mark in order to know it. Munich Child, picked it so it was real easy. From Munich it's Martin Poston. Very heavy detail, Baroque, fantastic mold work. An art, not just in the mold making, but an art in the ability to have it come out of the kiln as good as that, was done by D&B. Peter Dumler and Brian. A handle supported at the base, a typical classic style of a thumb lift, a bisque finish, top quality porcelain, earnest bone. Currington. A little bit of a giveaway over here. We'll say TW, but we'll see if anybody can remember who this Nuremberg distributor was by name.
Theodore Weissler.
Theodore Weissler. High raised base, verse around the base, often a little star. A harder one. Anybody? No guesses? Yeah, Reinhold Merkelbach. Good students. Classic handle. Handle is the best, easiest to see feature. Rounded, fat body. Good quality character Steins. Often marked but hard to distinguish or read. Merkelbach and Wick. Top quality, big money. No pewter. Classic, undistinguishable thumb lift, or I should say low-key thumb lift. Always extremely good glazes. We won't say anything about patented. We'll use the right name, which was Shearholt. How many got all of them? Anybody get all of them? How many missed all of them? No, I've done this 3 times now, and I think you guys did really well. So I don't know whether I'm going faster or getting better, but or you guys are just smarter in Texas. I think you did really well. I want to thank you for letting me share my first love, not my only one, but in character Steins. I got started by Sam Brainerd in the club, and I got carried away with them, and I enjoy them very much, and I enjoy letting you know what I think about them. Thank you very much.
I'll see you next time.